Have you ever found yourself in one of those relationships where the chemistry, man, it feels like magic, right? Like something straight out of a movie. But the day-to-day reality is just a slow, painful grind of misery. It is such a confusing and exhausting dance, and so many of us know it all too well. You feel this insane pull, this instant connection, but no matter what you do, it just always ends in pain. So let's get into it and figure out what's really going on with this paradox. Wow, this quote just nails it. It really gets to the heart of the feeling, doesn't it? It's like this force completely hijacks your logical brain. All the red flags, all the warnings from your friends, even that little voice deep down inside, it all just gets drowned out by this powerful, almost hypnotic pull. You think it's destiny, but what's really happening is a very predictable pattern pulling you toward a very specific type of person. And that's the million-dollar question, right? It's the one that keeps you up at night, wondering if you're just broken or maybe just cursed when it comes to love. But what if I told you it's not your fault, and it's definitely not random? There's actually a science to this attraction, a hidden dynamic that, once you see it, well, it changes everything. Okay, so the theory that really decodes this whole mess is called the human magnet syndrome, and it suggests that this intense attraction isn't just a coincidence or a string of bad luck. Nope, it's as predictable as two magnets with opposite poles just snapping together, a perfect but perfectly dysfunctional match. So this magnetic pull, it happens between two very specific, opposing types of people. On one side, you have the giver. Someone who's selfless, patient, and gets their sense of value from taking care of others. And on the other side, you've got the taker, someone who is selfish, entitled, and needs constant admiration. They are, in a very real psychological way, a perfect fit for each other. Let's just break that down a little bit. The giver, who we often call a codependent, is all about putting others first. The taker, often a narcissist, is the complete opposite. They're self-centered, demanding, and they just soak up all that care without ever giving it back. This creates this incredibly powerful dance where one person's deep need to give perfectly matches the other person's deep need to take. And to make this even clearer, the psychotherapist Ross Rosenberg created what he calls the continuum of self. So imagine a scale from -5 to +5. A person who is totally other-oriented, a codependent, is a -5. A pathologically narcissistic person who is completely self-oriented is a +5. So what happens when they meet? Well, a -5 and a +5 equals 0. This creates what's called a zero-sum relationship. It's perfectly balanced, perfectly stable, and perfectly miserable. Okay, so if this magnet is so destructive, where in the world does it come from? Well, that pull, it's not a character flaw. It's actually a deep wound, one that goes all the way back to childhood. The magnet exists because your unconscious mind is trying to solve a problem that started long, long before your first date. This is the self-love deficit disorder pyramid, and you can think of it as our roadmap to the real source of the problem. You see the symptoms up at the top, the codependency, the endless giving. But to really get it, we have to dig all the way down to the foundation, layer by painful layer, to find the actual root cause. Right at the very bottom of that pyramid is something called attachment trauma. This is what happens when a child is raised by a narcissistic parent. They learn a really devastating lesson, and it's this: I am only lovable for what I do for you, not for who I am. Love isn't given freely, it has to be earned, usually by making that parent happy and keeping them calm. And a key part of this trauma is often something called emotional incest. Now, this is when a parent forces a child to be their emotional partner, their confidant, maybe even their therapist. The child is basically robbed of their childhood because they have to carry the emotional weight of an adult, and they learn to just ignore their own needs to serve their parents. And this trauma, it creates two devastating aftershocks. The first is a deep internalized core shame, this belief that you are fundamentally broken or unlovable. And the second is a pathological loneliness. This is a bone-aching pain that feels like it can only be cured by being in a relationship. This loneliness is so intense that it creates an addiction to relationships, no matter how painful they are, just to numb that awful feeling.
So, once you find yourself in this dance, how do you survive it? It is absolutely crucial to understand that these tools are for self-protection. They are not for changing your partner. You cannot fix them. The goal here is to protect yourself from the harm they cause while you work on your own healing.
I love this quote from George Bernard Shaw because it says everything. Arguing with a narcissist is literally like wrestling a pig in the mud. You cannot win. They live for conflict. That's their home turf. They love the mud. The only winning move is to refuse to get in the ring in the first place.
So, your first survival tool is called Observe, Don't Absorb. This is all about creating a mental and emotional shield. When your partner tries to provoke you, you witness it, kind of like a scientist observing a specimen. You see the behavior, you note it, but you refuse to let their toxic energy penetrate your inner peace. You don't absorb the poison.
The second tool is called the of course method, and it's brilliant. Because narcissists are incredibly predictable, you can use that to your advantage. So when they lie or they insult you, instead of getting shocked and hurt, you just calmly say to yourself, of course they're blaming me. Of course they're twisting my words. This short-circuits your emotional reaction and keeps you out of that wrestling ring. Look, survival is one thing, but the real goal is to find the cure. The ultimate solution isn't about escaping your partner. It's about totally transforming your relationship with yourself. It's about going from being their emotional cellmate to becoming your own soulmate. This right here is such an empowering way to reframe this. For decades, the label has been codependency, which, let's be honest, carries a lot of shame. But Rosenberg reframed it as self-love deficit disorder. And why is that so important? Because it correctly identifies the root of the problem, a lack of self-love, and it defines it as a treatable condition you can actually recover from. So this journey is really about moving from a state of self-love deficit to one of self-love abundance. You start out by sacrificing yourself for others, just hoping for little scraps of validation. The goal is to get to a place of wholeness, of strong boundaries, of self-respect, where your worth comes from inside, not from them. At the end of the day, your energy is completely wasted trying to change or defeat the narcissist. True freedom, the real cure, comes from turning inward and healing those childhood wounds that created that magnetic pull in the first place. Because when you heal yourself, the magnet, it just loses its power. And that's really what it all comes down to, isn't it? You've spent years, maybe a lifetime, trapped in this emotional prison, serving someone else's needs. The journey out of that prison isn't about finding a better soulmate. It's about realizing that you hold the key to your own freedom and finally becoming the loving, supportive partner you've been searching for all along.